Hey, welcome to the Do Good Work podcast. Today we have a special episode with Paul Hevesy. Paul is an executive leadership coach, an author, and actor, and he has 20 years of experience in corporate America with sales, operation, and HR while navigating massive amounts of change and leading others through it, which is a pivotal key skill set. Paul is also building an executive coaching business, publishing his first book, and is an aspiring actor. And he is on a mission to be a light in a dark world. You'll find that today's episode is a little bit different from most. Paul, we're actually going through a real situation in his life where he is expanding and growing and has a lot of different opportunities. And we're going to walk through those together on the podcast, what led up to this point, the habits that he's developed to be primed positioned for this, and even going through a live strategy session. So this is a little bit different than most episodes. Hope you enjoy it. Cool. Well, Paul, thanks for being on, man.
Thanks, Raul. Glad to be here, man.
Hey, so there is quite a bit happening when we turn on our LinkedIn threads or Twitter threads, different changes of people going through career changes, startups, side hustles, ideas, writing a course, writing a book, creating a podcast, whatever it may be. And it's cool to see a lot of change. However, it's also one thing to see it happen and another thing to go through a period of change. And I think we're in a unique spot here with you that you're actively going through a pretty important change, not only in your career, but also you're publishing a book, you're looking for what's new, what else you can impact and add value. I want to start the dialogue there with zero script, zero idea what's next, just going through what led up to this change and why do you believe that you are in a very prime position to take advantage of anything that comes new so listeners can see what we can be doing daily to prepare ourselves for any opportunity. And two, what's out on the horizon?
Yeah, I love that. I love that topic, especially as you mentioned, I'm living through it. So just a little history on me. I've spent almost 21 years in a large company, a great company, doing all kinds of really cool things. A long career from sales to operations to HR, all kinds of leadership opportunities. Company that I was with for so long, it gave me all kinds of really cool things to go do. That ended about a month ago here in 2022. And so all of those things that you just talked about, hey, what's next? Hey, should I start a podcast? I'm actually a certified executive coach. So should I go do that full time? I've got people reaching out to me saying, hey, we've got this we want to go do and that we want to go do. And I'm in this situation where, and part of my challenge, Raul, is I think I can do anything. So that's not necessarily a good thing. I don't know if it's bad, but there's part of me that's okay. When you think you can do anything,
you got the entrepreneurial bug where you have what we sometimes call it the shiny object syndrome. It's like, oh, something pops up, let's do it. And we have to restrain. And the restraining is actually harder than it sounds.
That's exactly right. So I'm living that right now. Fortunately, I've got some time to do that with my current situation. So I'm going to take some time to do that. And that would probably be those who can. If you can take a little bit of time and clear your head and talk to different people. One of the things I've been doing these last few weeks is, and this is a great conversation with you as well, getting perspectives from different people, grabbing lunch, grabbing breakfast, not talking about jobs, not talking about work, but just talking about things they're working on, things that they see out there and the work that you do. Stuff comes from that, thoughts, ideas.
Which is incredible.
Yeah. So I've been doing that kind of thing. And you mentioned one thing that I think is really important and something that I inadvertently did over the last few years is I started doing other things. I gave up some things that were taking up my time and I applied that time to other things. So for example, I went out and got an executive coaching certification and just started using it internal in the company that I was in. So I started coaching leaders within my company. Didn't get any extra money for that. Didn't get extra anything necessary for that, but the experience. You mentioned the book, same kind of thing. I had this idea. I sat on it for a while. I finally had 3 people in my life in a 30-day period that said, hey, you should write a book. I said, hey, I got this idea. What do you think? They said, hey, you should do it. And so then I took 30 minutes a night and just applied time to that and consistently over time. So I only mentioned that rule to say when my main job, my main focus went away, I have used, now I'm only a month into it, but I've kept myself busy. There's stuff going on.
There's one of the keys that I want to talk about.
Yeah, yeah. So those somebody listening today, maybe you've got that job that you've had for a while, like me. I was not bored by any means, but one of my last title in the company I was in was organizational effectiveness. So it was basically a culture forming role for a company where I was trying to save people time. Hey, let's be more effective in our daily work.
Yeah.
So the guy that's doing that ought to have some extra time. Like I carved time out of my schedule because that was one of the things that
All right. You practice what you preach.
yeah, I try to practice what I preach. Long story short, all that to say, I think having things that keep your mind occupied, and it may mean giving up some other things that you're used to doing. So, for example, I don't watch a lot of TV, if any. So that's something that I gave up to say, hey, I'm going to apply that time. It might not be TV for people, things that may not, maybe giving you less return to focus on things that are giving you more return and
Yeah.
being very intentional about that.
No, 100%. So I think I want to dive into and dive into a few things that you said and break those into different segments. Because
Sure.
one, this will be an interesting podcast because we're exploring the unknown together and getting ideas. And we're recording a private dialogue. It's going to, most of the times I have guests on and they either teach on a specific topic or their own experience,
Sure.
which is great value. But it's cool that here we're doing that indirectly in like coffee or a tea chat or a water chat, whatever we're drinking. But so there's a few things here that you mentioned that I do want to bring up. One, I kind of want to talk about the habits that you've developed during the work that we're doing, because I think that's important. Like, as if I reflect back when I was in corporate and I left, I think 2016 or 17, I forgot which year. The fact that I had to become more disciplined with time and being able to be more functional when that whole block of 9 hours or 10 hours of the commute and the work, et cetera, was gone. Sometimes I didn't know exactly what to do with myself because then the work really only takes 3, 4, 5 hours solid work. But when you're starting, it takes 12, 14. So I think there's that one key thing that we can talk about. What were the habits that you developed? And then also, not just the habits to prepare yourself for opportunity, but also the activities and behaviors that you are engaged. Because right now you have opportunities coming to you, which is a really good spot to be where you're making decisions between good, best, or better.
Yeah.
But those don't just happen. You planted the seeds somewhere, and how did you water them? What did that look like? So let's talk about both the habits personally as well as the habits to grow professionally that you've developed over the years. So now you're seeing the fruits of that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So first of all, I don't have it all figured out. So usually when people like me start talking about all the different things that they do, it sounds like you got it all figured out. I do
It's
not
a
have it, not
perspective.
have
No,
it
I
all
know
figured
it's a
out, right?
perspective. It's a perspective, but it's a working one. So maybe we can learn some
Yeah.
insights from it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So I mentioned organizational effectiveness. It's too long of a story to go into, but it's essentially I built or was part of building a program to change our work culture. The company I was with is a old company, 100+ year company. And so every company, every organization big or small, just starting or been around for a long time has a work culture, has a way of doing things. And we all pick up bad habits. I remember this, I didn't see the sign, but I've been told of this sign on a old Canadian dirt road that's got a bunch of ruts in it. And the sign says, choose your rut wisely because you'll
Hmm.
be in it for the next 5 miles. Just
that's,
remind.
that's
So
that's pretty wise.
yeah, yeah. Hey, you get in that rut, it's hard to get out. And so every company got into it. So I spent some time building this kind of very practical program
Mhm.
specifically for leaders to say, hey, let's transform the way you're communicating with your team. Let's transform the way you're meeting with your team. What should your meetings look like moving forward? How long should they be? What should your agendas look like? How do you prioritize when everything's a priority? Nothing is. So we started just doing some of those more and more of those practical type things. And so now I started to try to apply some of those obviously to my life and how I live. So some of the big things that I do is always try to get exercise in, and I always mix that up. So again, that also can be a rut. So, hey, I get it in every morning. For me, after a while, every morning, I got to just mix it up. And in the mixing it up, now I'm doing it over lunchtime. And sometimes I do it in the evenings and just trying to mix it up that way. The exercise is good. You hear about that a lot, but fresh air is good, especially a lot of people working from home. Just getting fresh air was good. We've got 2 dogs here at home. Take the dogs on a walk, find a time, get out, look at the sky, enjoy the sun. That kind of thing is like good for your head.
I was
And
actually
then,
talking to a team that they do their best work while like it might sound like it's not valuable, but you might get 3 or 4 projects done in your mind on that walk. Then when you come back to the
Yes.
computer, you just execute on it.
It's so true. And there's something magical, I think, between kind of in the physical world, the connection between the natural world and humans.
Yeah.
Like God put that in us. And so getting away from technology, even to the point where you take that. So I hear some people, and it's fine. Hey, I listen to a podcast when I go walking. I try to actually just not have any of that. And I just listen to the birds, listen to what's happening, listen to the wind and the leaves, all that kind of stuff. There's something there. I don't want to get weird, but there's something there,
Yeah, there's something there.
in
There is
terms of,
that definitely a human connection that I feel like
yeah,
you might.
that connection there. And then I would find a little thing that's really helped me. And we're all connected to our phones probably too much. Something I've been working on. I haven't figured that out. But one thing that I started doing is actually leaving my phone out of the bedroom at night and actually reading a physical book before bed. And there's all different ways people do that and wind down, but that's just a little thing that actually allowed me to it just allows me to focus on something other than the technology, which I've
And these
always
are
thought.
small little habits that are not like impossible. These are actually doable.
Yeah, yeah, very doable, but they also give you
A compounding
I don't know,
effect.
yeah, a compounding effect and almost like this like break in the routine effect. There's so much of the routine that we do, and even some of the stuff I'm talking about turns into a routine, which is why I suggest shuffling it from time to time, giving yourself some grace. Oh, I missed my workout. I usually work out from 6:30 to 7:30. Hey, do it at lunch. Right. Do it over the noon hour. Do it. It's okay. And I think actually in the break of the routine is a good thing.
Yeah, because it interrupts it's like a pattern interrupt, and it also can spark new ideas.
100%.
So those are like
Yeah.
the personal habits that you've developed, and I think that's important for us to take note of that and be able to practice them. Let's talk a little bit more of the professional habits too, to be able to water the plants with teams or network, because they're to give you perspective. There could be someone who's exceptional in their career and they're in it 5 or 10 years, but they're not doing anything outside of the work. They're not
Yeah.
actively engaging in new relationships, new exposure, masterminds, going to reach out to what's new. So I'd be curious to know like what you've practiced and then you've actually led teams to do this. What did you teach them? And how did they flourish?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. It's a great question. I love, again, this like kind of human connection. So the last few years have been wild in terms of that. And so I've been super intentional, especially the last 2.5 years of just connecting with people in person, grab some coffee, tea, breakfast,
Mm,
grab a lunch. Like when people say, hey, we should get together, I get my phone out and say, okay, when? Trying to be very intentional about that.
yeah.
I actually learned that from one of my connections. I said it to him a few months ago and I said, yeah, we should get together sometime. He got his phone out. He said, all right, when? Let's do
Let's
it
not
right.
yeah, let's not actually talk about it. Let's do about it.
Right. Let's put it on the schedule. So being very intentional about connecting with people, especially when you don't need them, is really good. One of the habits I made, and it was reflected when I announced that I had left my company, recently. A lot of the comments I got back from people was, "Hey, you always took the time for me. You always reached out," and I think that would always be an encouragement. And just it was a reminder for me because I can get away from that because we all get busy, but
Yep.
one of the really good habits is just to connect with people when you don't need anything from them. Especially now with technology, you can do that anytime. Hey, how you doing? Hey, just thought of you. Hey, said a prayer for you today. Thought I'd check in. The other thing is cool. It sounds so simple, but birthdays. So one of my
Yeah.
guy I used to work with 10 years ago, I still have his birthday on my calendar and it was yesterday. So I hit him up on a text, nothing fancy. Hey, happy birthday, man. Hope you're doing great. And then that spurred this whole other conversation. How you doing? Catching up, that kind of thing. So I always try to be very intentional about birthdays. Hey, know when somebody's birthday is, put it on your calendar,
That's
current.
smart, yeah, because
Yeah.
that's the key thing too. I mean, there's a few people that I do that for, but also there's what you mentioned earlier I thought was important is we only reach out to people when we need
Yeah.
something. And then
Yeah.
that kind of creates a disenchantment or a disingenuousness to the relationship. Because like,
Yeah.
hey, actually, I needed something from you, Paul. So I'm actually just reaching out because I need something. So it's more like
Yeah.
a utilitarian as opposed to there's give and take. There's ebb and flow on both ends. I was inspired. A team member once told me she practices reaching out to 3 people a day. It's not easy. for me
Yeah.
personally, like it's a lot of
No,
work.
no.
Maybe it's not a lot of work. Maybe I just haven't developed the full muscle of that habit, but it's reaching out to 3 people a day, but then you reach out and you have different intentions. Either A, you say, hey, Paul, I saw this article, thought you might find it interesting, send your way. That's a simple
Mhm.
2 sentence message. Another one could be an encouragement. It's like, hey, Julie, you're running a marathon next month. I just saw Paul finish a marathon. I thought it'd be pretty cool. You're probably going to do really great. Encouragement.
Yeah.
And the third
Yeah.
is just making introductions. And that's the easiest one. Say, hey, Paul, I heard that you're doing executive coaching. I got this person looking for an executive coach. Here's a good introduction or
Amazing.
outreach.
No, I love that. It's a great point, Raul. And I actually just had some experience with that recently. And to your point, some of the hardest times to do that is when you're in the greatest need of something, right? So
Yeah.
it's this really like
It's
this
a patient
tension that
game.
you have because you want to be like, maybe this person can help me. And it's always a good reminder to say, hey, how can I help this person first? I think it was Zig Ziglar that said, you can get everything you want out of life if you just help enough people get what they
Get
want
enough
out
what
of
they
life.
want.
Yeah.
You can't
Right.
see the
That whole
bookshelf
mindset.
because there's a lot of them, but that's
Right.
Zig's right there.
Yes. I love it. But that's so very true and very hard to do. But I actually recently, I don't know, within the last year, reconnected with someone in my network, to your
Mhm.
point, just that network that I've built. And he's started a podcast. And I've been thinking about starting a podcast. So I'm thinking about all the things, all the reasons why it wouldn't work and talk myself out of it. Well, here's a guy who just went and did it. And he's just starting to do it. And in his area, I could think of 2 or 3 people that I'm connected with that I think would be really meaningful conversations with the type of podcast he's trying to do. So
Yeah.
I just took the time and connected them, and not thinking like, hey, maybe if I do that for him, he'll do it for me. Now that I've got this book that's coming out soon, he found out about it and has reached out. And first thing he said is, "You've helped me so much. How can I help you?" And so all of that
Is that
stuff.
people want to keep helping. That's one interesting piece too. Like we're always open to help, but we're always afraid to ask for help. And I think that's something to keep in mind
Mm,
as well.
yeah, no, that's very true. Ego gets in the way, doesn't it?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's one key thing too. Like I recently did I put a challenge for a team member, like in a career development challenge. Like since it's really fresh in my mind, I think it'd be pretty interesting because it correlates to this conversation. Is I told them you're going to create a podcast that no one's going to listen to. Wow, what does that mean? No one's going to. Maybe you will listen to it. What does that mean? There's no production. There's no publication, but you're going to create a podcast. Like what? So essentially, the goal was to connect with 21 people within the industry that they want to grow in a podcast style, meaning they do the cold outreach, they have the email, the reason why, they have a script, at least some sort of structure to their podcast conversation. And they're not going to record it. So it's not going to be an actual podcast, but that's an idea to connect with 21 people around them developing in their career. And we came up with a whole strategy of how to do that. Like, here's the script. Here's how you're going to reach out. Here's what you have to
Yeah.
say and how you have to say it, so they can yes to be on the show. But I think it's a pretty good exercise, regardless if you're looking for something new or if you're in your career. I think if you're doing this for business reasons, there's a different strategy for podcasts.
Yeah.
But I think that what you're mentioning here does correlate. How do I reach out to people that are relevant? How can I add value? How can I connect? How can I
Yeah.
reciprocate? And then also have a call to action. And perhaps when you're building your career and you're growing, the call to action isn't buy my stuff. The call to action is, who do you know who
Yeah.
has this group, or who do you know that needs my help, or who do you know that could help me to this XYZ thing?
Yeah. It's incredible. It makes me think, going way back in my career, one of the things that I tried to help salespeople with, and this was actually it goes back to one of your earlier questions, is how you help other people in this area. One of the things we added into our training program for our sales team was very simply the best way to ask for referrals
Hmm.
from existing customers, which sounds like super basic, but what I found is some of our most successful salespeople, that's all that became their craft. They knew exactly how to do it, the words to say, so it didn't come off as swarmy or salesy, just really professionally done, and simply asking, hey, you've expressed you're really happy with our product and our services. Who else in your network would you mind introducing me to? Where we could help in a similar way. Just something as simple as that. And I'm always surprised when I talk to salespeople how little they do that. Like that existing, would always talk about that existing customer is your greatest opportunity for growth.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Both with expanding the services you provide to them, but also tapping into their network in a meaningful way.
Like you mentioned, in a way that's warm on both ends, where the other person wants to do it because they see the value, they like the value, and that's all in the delivery too, and that the product or the service or the experience you delivered was high
Yeah.
quality.
Yeah, 100%. And you also, to your point, need to know when it's not. So much of that is about timing, understanding, and I guess a lot of life is about timing, but especially in that those moments, you had to know. And we talked about that too. Hey, when's the right time to ask? When does it not make sense to ask? But it's funny. Some of the best times to ask for referrals it was when something went wrong, but we solved it.
Interesting. Oh, okay, so
Right,
you got a quick
but we
win. You got the
solved
win
it.
coming in.
Yeah, so you come in and you solve it. It wasn't some big sale, but, that something was a problem, you solved it quickly, you stayed in communication, and ultimately, that's the story that the customers would tell. Because nobody thinks you're gonna get it right all the time. People will sell that, but the reality is customers are looking whatever the industry in, they're looking for somebody that they can trust when it doesn't go right. Are they gonna be there? Are they gonna fix it for me? Are they gonna make sure it's right?
Dependability. That's the number
Yeah.
one factor, I think, is if I send Paul on a mission, I can guarantee it's gonna come back correct. If
Yes.
I got a little
Yes.
exercise or initiative, if I put the right person on there, I can depend on it. That's the number one trust factor, in my opinion. But that's so cool. And it's interesting too, these little moments. Let's talk about timing here. So
Yeah.
you got opportunities coming in. Your book's being published next week. Probably more opportunities will come from that. How do you discern between opportunities and what are you looking to do? And based on our conversation, sounds the networking and the outreach is a piece of that. But what are you
Yeah.
committing to doing
Yeah.
this month?
Yeah, that's right. New month. This month is all about launching that book. Been about a 2-year effort or longer than that, probably 2.5 years, just from first time I sat down, started writing to getting to this point where the book
Wow.
is launching. And timing, as I mentioned before, timing is everything. There was some concern a few months ago as I saw this kind of approaching. It's like, hey, it's not every day that you launch a book. And I've got a lot of experience in sales. And so I'm not going to just kind of let it happen. I want to be very proactive, join some podcasts, reach out, spend time talking to people as part of this book launch. But I have this full-time job. Well, now
Mhm.
as I say here, it's out today. That's not a worry for me anymore. So I can exclusively focus. So for the next 30 to 45 days, I'm really just focused on getting this book launch, getting the word out. Hopefully it's something that people enjoy and it's a great story for them and it's edifying for them and all that kind of stuff. So that's where I'm really focused. There's one of the things I wasn't ever able to do, Raul, in the company I was with was take full responsibility of one of their business units. I was next in line a couple times and it just didn't work out. It's one of those things, it's no hard feelings. It just doesn't work out. The
Yeah.
higher you go in an organization, the fewer spots are available. And so one of the things I am looking for is if by chance someone's listening to this podcast and they want to retire, but they don't have a succession plan for their small or medium size, I'm somebody I would think, call and with my experience across the spectrum of a business, take that and also my focus on building really good culture, take that and build that. That's something that's interesting to me. One of those people
Like a
talk about
startup company or like a small business, sub 20 people or mid-sized company? What are you looking for?
yeah, it's great. I think probably more mid-size. I'm really not interested in getting back into the big corporation environment. Not that it's bad. It's just I want to try something different. I want to
Yeah.
see if I can apply the skills I learned in a big company in a smaller one. And I also think the leadership aspect is so important. So sometimes people get hung up on, well, you don't know the industry or you don't have the network and there is value in that for sure. But so much of success, as you know, and the people that you work with a lot, Ro, is that leadership and ability to connect with people, ability to communicate and vision and strategy, and then help people tactically achieve it. Those are all things that I think I can apply in the right type of opportunity like that.
Or even like a
Marketing?
fractional. Have you considered fractional? That's a pretty interesting trend happening right now.
Tell me about that.
Let's open discovery session here. What would you say your major skill set is? If you come into a team of 5 people, what are you doing? to add the most value?
I would say the biggest thing that I would do is first understand what they're trying to accomplish and then
Well,
spend the rest of my time removing obstacles. Um,
100%, but what function is it? And I think that's a key question to
oh,
ask. And it has to be like a gut answer, like this thing. And I think
sure.
for everyone listening to this is a really good exercise.
Yeah.
I had to do this
Love it.
10 years ago and it was not easy. So there's 5 people. There's different functions to a business to grow. There's the people, the marketing, the sales, the HR, the growth, the et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Leadership planning, exciting, accounting, finance. What are you doing and why?
My focus would be on how to effectively communicate.
Okay. So leadership
I would
planning and
bring,
strategy.
I would take it a layer or a level lower than that role and just
Okay.
say, hey, here, I'm going to help you be the most effective communicator in your role that you could possibly be. That's where I'm going to help
Okay.
you the most.
That's interesting. Now the key thing would be to parallel that to a function that
Yeah.
companies need. And perhaps maybe some companies don't need that full time, but they might need it fractionally. So it's
Ah,
a portfolio of small companies that you're helping on a fractional basis where the sum total of the fees that you charge are equal or greater than
ah,
they tend to be greater than a salary.
I get it. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think of take those functions. Think of all the think HR, for example. Think of all the communication that they've got to do internally, externally, recruiting, interviewing, all that kind of thing. Come alongside an HR team, for example, and helping them kind of master communication in everything that they're doing. Of course, sales is in there, even operations and how you communicate. So yeah, that's interesting. That's really
Yeah.
so. I would love what I've got to do to your point, Roll, and I don't have it figured out is what is that? What does that look like? How committed am I to that? Because you got to remember, and one thing I'm struggling against is this like for so long, I've had the consistent paycheck thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Even in sales, and I spent a lot of time early in my career in field sales, there was a level of consistency there. And so I'm trying to wrap my mind around that. If I do go do something like that, what is that? I got to be ready for that uncertainty again.
It's interesting. Yeah, no, that's 100. And I really appreciate you being vulnerable with that because I can definitely understand. Like I can resonate with you. I believe a lot of our listeners can resonate with you. So I really appreciate that level of vulnerability because again, this is a unique podcast. It's not traditional of what we usually do. But I think even that the inconsistency of ebbs and flows, I don't that can be its own podcast in itself. There are a few communities that kind of teach that. I can recommend some. I know that there's a community called Small Bets that does kind of tries to conquer that for the creator market. But one thing that I would also recommend in kind of the way that I see and think about it when it comes to positioning is ensuring that whatever value add you deliver, if it's a small company, 20, 50 people, if it's mid-size, 50, 150, 200 people, depending on who you want to target in what niche and what industry, it's always leaning into if they invest $1 with me, am I making them $2 back or am I saving them $2? And how do I position the activities and the actions that I do in that realm? And that might seem a bit blunt and forward. And a lot of people might think, well, I don't know how I do that. I'm a project manager. I don't know how to do that. I'm I work with human resources or like things that you
Yeah.
don't typically, but you can always, in my opinion, relate it back to a savings or a gain. And I think the best way to position that is where you can help with a small win initially, but then a long-term win to keep that
Uh,
consistency.
yeah. That's so great, man. And both are valuable to your point,
Yeah,
gaining
100%.
or saving, right? Yeah.
Yeah, who
But
wouldn't do that? That's like the investment that's a no-brainer.
that's right. Why do you think it's so hard for people to find that? What gets in the
There's
way?
hesitancy. Some people don't like to put a dollar amount to their work. Other people don't even know like the hour value count. Some people are stuck to hourly wages versus value wage. I always equate that if you charge by the hour, if you believe that you are worth by the hour, then you will always be time poor, which is very difficult to scale because there's only 24 hours in a day. So it's always to be able to balance that out. But also when you're pitching or when you're offering or you're working with teams, decisions makers, that's one of the crux of the decisions. What's the opportunity cost? What's the cost? And what's the value gain? And what's the value long term?
Yeah. That's great. That's super helpful for me. I appreciate that. because those are all the kinds of things I'm trying to figure out and potentially muster up the courage to go do something. Because it's very easy to kind of overestimate other people's abilities and underestimate your own.
Oh yeah.
You
I've
know,
done that for years until you
right?
realize it's not that big of a deal. It's like that
That's right.
aha moment. And I don't know how many times you have to hear it over and over again until you get it. Wait a minute. There's no secret sauce. It's just doing it.
It's taking that first step, putting yourself out there. I actually have right now, as we're talking, someone in my network reached out and needs some help they're going through a huge transformation and they've got a morale problem, basically.
Oh dang, yeah.
And they know of the different work and stuff that I've done with my previous company. And he says, "Hey, what would it take for you to come in, spend some time on our retreat? I'm doing a 1-day retreat and then come back in and work with the team." And first thing that goes through my mind is, I have no idea. I don't know what but then as I started thinking about, we were talking it through, like, yeah, that is something I can do because I've got that experience. I just had to think of it a little bit differently.
Absolutely.
So right now I'm trying to figure out what that looks like. But in that, I think to me, what I'm pushing through is that self-awareness that says, I don't know what that is. It's uncertain. I don't know how I would even put up a recommendation or pricing for that. First of all, recognizing that for me, this is me recognizing I'm talking myself out of it and then talking myself into, okay, you're in the process of talking yourself out of this. Because of that, I'm going to go do it. And that's really what I did with this book as well. It's like, I had this idea and I talked myself out of it. And then I finally, because of 3 important people in my life, all at the same time, or same period, said, "You got to go do it." I'm like, all right. It like snapped me out of it. Okay, I can go do it. I don't know what I'm doing. All right, we'll just start.
That's the most important piece. So that's the coolest part, that the culture, society, peers, people around us, by thinking and talking, influence behaviors, because that's how we learn, that's how we grow. And that's an interesting perspective. But yeah, I have zero idea what the retreat is. I have zero idea what the work is. Would you be cool to maybe do a quick ending the call with a quick strategy around that and what I would suggest in approaching it, even with zero idea?
I would love that. Please do it.
Yeah, it'd be pretty cool.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
again, I think you were vulnerable to say that you don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. I never have all the answers, but at least we can think to achieve to a
Yes.
possible solution. And that's the only
Would
power that I believe that I have.
would love that.
Right. So whatever, there's a morale problem, I think you got to justify the cost. What does that morale problem actually look like? If someone's upset, I'm going to be really blunt here. Who cares? And we always have to ask that question in a blunt way, not because we don't have empathy, but because we always have to answer that question. Who actually cares? We have a morale problem. Who cares? The CEO or the C-suite cares. Why? Because these are our lead managers. And if they can't do this, what can't they do? Oh, we can't fulfill on this shipment, or we can't fulfill on this gross 10% growth margins that we're trying to add to the company or to this product. Okay, why does that matter? Because X, Y, and Z. Okay, so you're telling me that this morale problem is, I don't know, $230,000 worth of an issue. Yeah, okay, cool. What are you trying to do about it? We're going on a retreat. What are you going to talk about? I have zero clue. Okay. And from there, I think it would be looking at your product suite, or I call them products, but essentially it's your tools, your quivers, and your tool belt. I know this mechanism helps this. I know this procedure or exercise or thought experiment or template helps them do this. And I can walk people through, and I've done this in the past, and typically it allows people to have a better approach. Whatever your solution is, you need to map it out. And X, Y, and Z. You do X, you get Y result, and come up with a curriculum. And then when you come to price it, you need to understand, and really, this is part of the salesmanship, which I know that you have plenty of experience with. It's about positioning it in a way where if the price is too low, they might not think that you're the pro. If the price is too high, you're not going to get the gig. But there is an approach where you can price it in a way where it's equating to the value. If the true value of them not succeeding is $230,000 and you're charging $150 an hour and you're only there for 3 hours, that's peanuts.
Right.
Don't want to do that.
Right.
You got to charge enough where it's worth your time. They cover the costs. You go there and fly in on their dime because they're taking you out from other opportunities.
Sure. Yeah.
But then also, I believe that positioning it against the loss and gain and making the gain worth the bet, I think is worth it. To give you a parallel, one of the teams we did we had them do an audit, and this audit cost a certain amount of money, but if it worked, it would save 10 times that amount. And it's a bet. We're saying I'm risking this cash
Mm-hmm.
because I have a hypothesis and I believe the hypothesis to be true. However, it is a bet, but I'm going to take the bet because the gain is asymmetrical. So that's just one way that I would approach it. Again, zero clue, zero advice. This is not professional training advice. It's just how.
Bro, that is it's amazing how you laid that out. So helpful for me personally, but I know for anybody listening. The one thing just to give you some encouragement, the reason that this person on my network came to me is he did say, I did some initial discovery, he said, "Hey, if this team leaves, it's gonna have a huge impact on the rest of the sales organization specifically, because these are like the top of the top sales leaders in the company right now." To your point, I didn't further quantify, hey, what impact would that have on the rest of the year?
How do we replace them?
Yeah, good. So that gets me thinking about understanding what that looks like. And the other thing that you helped me think about is matching my fees to the problem. Because I was thinking of it like, first thing I thought of was, what could I charge per day? Was how I was thinking about it, that would still get it, not scare them away, but not be too little that they won't have the respect for me, all that kind of stuff. And I was thinking about it wrong. Got to think about what's the challenge or problem that my services could help solve or save. I love that.
100%. And the one key thing too that it helped me substantially was always give options. For option A, you always want to give the biggest option. Here, I wouldn't say ultimatums. You should consider giving the highest price first because that's your anchor, right? You know that. But when you do that, though, you always give options around, we can do this, and this is what comes included. And I'll also do like more follow-ups with you. We'll get on a weekly call. I'll get on whatever it is. Like that event is just one piece of the equation. You can do so much more virtually and after the event. But then there's option B where it's more reasonable continuity. And then option C could be just a per DM or whatever you want to charge. There's different options and different ways to skew it.
Cool.
And really it's up to them, giving them the power to choose their diagnosis.
Yeah. So helpful, man. Look at that. Didn't even know that was going to happen today. I'm glad
I said
mentioned
this was going to be unscripted, but I hope that the audience appreciates a good dialogue between, seeing how you're experiencing this today, which is extremely relevant right now, but also know that's not the end. And there's so much more that's possible and capable. I say that to myself. I'm saying that to you. I'm saying that to the audience. There's always a lot of possibilities out there. But Paul, I think for our listeners out there, where can people go to thank you for being on the pod and also reach out to you, learn more about you?
Yeah, sure. There's really two places that I send people. You can go to paulhevesy.com, PaulHevesy.com. Now that's where everything about me is there. And then obviously you can find me on LinkedIn, and that's just LinkedIn. Search Paul Hevesy. You'll find me. I would love to connect with you there. If I'm not connected with you already, it'd be great to connect. I don't put a ton of stuff out, but I actually, my business that I started, and by the way, that's just a little bit of an ad for everybody as well. Someone pushed me about a year and a half ago while I was still in my current role. Hey, we want you to come in and do some culture. And she said, you have an LLC set up, right? I'm like, oh, no, I don't. So you got to do that. Great thing is I went out and set all that up and haven't used it for that. She couldn't bring me in. It never worked out. It was fine. There's no hard feelings. Point is, now that's set up, and the name of the LLC is Success on Tuesday. So what I try to do every Tuesday is post something relevant to what I've learned and what's happening. So
that's cool. That's a cool trilogy or a good series of updates. But yeah, we'll put the links. I got the Success on Tuesdays, your LinkedIn, and the website, but we'll put those on the show notes. Paul, it's been a pleasure, man.
Awesome, man. Thanks, brother. Thanks for the time. It's great meeting you, spending some time. This is awesome.
If you found value in today's podcast, please consider sharing this with someone that you believe could also benefit from this episode. You never know, you may be the catalyst that opens them up to a new way of operating their business and experiencing life. As always, it's an honor to be a small part of your journey. This is Raul Hernandez. Do good work.